The arms trade in Africa is one of the most lucrative yet contentious industries globally, intertwining power, sovereignty, and economic ambition. With an annual worth exceeding $500 billion, this market fuels strife as much as it attempts to secure stability. Despite a global decline of 3.3% in arms transfers from 2014 to 2023, Africa's role remains critical, shaped by deep-rooted historical ties, opaque dealings, and ongoing conflicts. Although African arms imports have dropped by 40% over the last decade, weapons continue to flow into active conflict zones, including the insurgencies in the Sahel, the civil war in Sudan, and militia-driven unrest in the Democratic Republic of Congo. These regions serve as a stark reminder of how imported military equipment, from small arms to heavy artillery, profoundly impacts both peace and war. But beyond statistics lies a darker narrative: the illicit networks and shadowy deals that drive this trade. Arms traffickers, sanctioned paramilitaries, and corrupt governments play critical roles in perpetuating instability. Today, we explore who sells arms in Africa, why, and how this dynamic continues to shape the continent's present and future. In 2023, African nations collectively spent $51.6 billion on defense, representing 2.1% of the global defense budget. While arms imports to Africa have declined, this trend masks growing complexities. Experts predict that Africa's transformation into a $29 trillion economy by 2050 will fuel increased defense budgets, positioning the continent as a significant player in global arms markets. Africa's reliance on imported military hardware stems from its limited domestic production capacity. Developing nations rarely have the capability to produce their own weapon systems and must typically import them from established state-owned or private companies in developed nations. This dependency is not merely logistical, it is deeply rooted in historical and technological ties. For example, many African countries that were supplied by the Soviet Union during the Cold War continue to purchase similar systems for maintenance and familiarity, as switching providers is cost-prohibitive. The Sahel's escalating insurgency, Sudan's protracted civil war, and proxy battles in Libya illustrate how arms not only secure borders, but also perpetuate violence. While some imports support legitimate uses like anti-poaching efforts or peacekeeping, others fuel corruption and are diverted to militias, rogue governments, or private entities, often undermining regional stability. The African arms market is dominated by four major players: Russia, the United States, China, and France. Each supplier's approach is shaped by strategic interests, historical relationships, and the unique demands of African nations. Russia accounts for 40% of Africa's arms imports, solidifying its position as the continent's largest supplier. Over recent years, Russian arms sales have surged, with state-owned Rosoboron export targeting resource-rich yet cash-poor nations. This strategy often involves barter agreements, exchanging arms for minerals or geographic access, creating long-term dependencies. In sub-Saharan Africa, Russia's influence extends through deals with Angola, Nigeria, and Sudan. However, controversy surrounds its involvement in illicit networks. In Sudan, for instance, Russian arms frequently cross borders to Libya, supporting the Wagner Group, a paramilitary organization accused of fueling instability. Russia's approach avoids imposing political conditions, making it an attractive partner for nations wary of Western scrutiny. Yet, its actions, such as supplying arms to factions in Libya against UN embargoes, underscore the pragmatic and often opaque nature of its dealings. Coming at second place, you have the United States, which, while less visible, is Africa's second largest arms supplier, accounting for 16% of imports. Companies like Lockheed Martin and Boeing have forged partnerships with key allies, including Egypt and Morocco. In 2022 alone, Egypt received $2.5 billion in American military equipment, including advanced F-16 jets. These deals often come with strings attached, such as counter-terrorism collaborations and training programs. In regions like the Sahel, the United States' support has been pivotal in combating extremist groups. Thirdly, you have China, whose influence has grown exponentially in recent decades, accounting for 10% of Africa's arms imports. Chinese manufacturers, like Norinco, specialize in cost-effective equipment, including drones and armored vehicles, which are increasingly deployed in conflict zones like the Sahel and Tigray. China's long-term strategy includes establishing maintenance facilities in Nigeria and Mali, ensuring clients remain dependent on their systems. These hubs not only cement Beijing's influence, but also reshape regional power dynamics. And of course, of the four key players, we can't forget France, whose deep colonial ties have made it a long-standing player in Africa, accounting for 7.6% of arms imports. Key partners include Morocco, Algeria, and Senegal. French arms often undertake so-called counter-terrorism initiatives, particularly in the Sahel, where operations like Barkhane rely heavily on these supplies. Despite rising competition from China and Turkey, France leverages its historical relationships to maintain a foothold in the market. However, anti-French sentiment and shifting alliances increasingly challenge its dominance. One country that you may not typically associate with weapons and war in Africa is Turkey. With a growing presence in Africa, particularly in the north, with arms exports increasing by 5 times in recent years. Its Bayraktar TB2 drones have been deployed in Ethiopia and Libya, where they have decisively impacted ongoing conflicts. Another intriguing player worth mentioning in Africa's arms trade is the new entrant India. And of course, like the rest of the other nations, their aim is not for Africans themselves, but to use Africa as a proxy destination to counter China's influence. Recent engagements include supplying arms to Kenya and exploring joint ventures in South Africa. By offering technology transfer agreements, India aims to position itself as a reliable partner for African nations. Africa's defense industry, though nascent, holds immense potential. South Africa's Denel and Nigeria's Daikon exemplify how innovation can reduce dependency on foreign suppliers. However, challenges like limited funding and fragmented regulations persist. South Africa's pioneering inspection clauses, aimed at preventing weapons diversion, highlight the continent's potential to lead in ethical arms trading. Yet, economic pressures often undermine such efforts, as seen in dealings with Gulf nations. And there you have it on the leading suppliers of weapons in Africa. As the continent's economies continue to grow, its arms trade will continue to evolve alongside it. But the main issue remains just as seen in other industries. Will the continent overcome its dependency on foreign suppliers, or will it remain entangled in the complexities of global arms politics? The path forward depends on innovation, transparency, and the courage to prioritize peace over profit for the better good of the African people. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already for more content on Africa, its history, key events shaping it today and tomorrow. Most importantly, don't forget to leave a comment on what you think about the weapon trade in Africa and its true effect. Who are the big players? Who are the big winners? And most importantly, who is losing out the most?